The rain had been falling over downtown Chicago since early morning. By 6 o'clock, most people were hurrying home, their heads down, umbrellas tilted against the wind. But Ethan Walker wasn't heading home yet. The 38-year-old single father was finishing another long shift as a city maintenance technician. His work wasn't glamorous. Most days involved repairing broken street fixtures, fixing public benches, and handling small emergencies around the city. It wasn't the career he had imagined when he was younger. But it paid the bills. And more importantly, it helped him raise his 12-year-old daughter, Lily. As Ethan crossed a nearly empty plaza near the Riverwalk, something caught his eye. A smartphone. It lay beside a wet metal bench, partially hidden beneath a fallen newspaper. He looked around. Nobody. The plaza was almost deserted. Ethan picked up the phone. It was expensive. Very expensive. The kind of phone he could never justify buying for himself. The screen lit up automatically. And Ethan froze. His heart nearly stopped. The lock screen displayed an old high school yearbook photo. A teenage boy smiling awkwardly in a blue graduation gown. A face Ethan recognized instantly. His own. For several seconds he simply stared. Rain dripped from his jacket. Traffic hummed in the distance. But everything else disappeared. Why was his high school picture on a stranger's phone? And whose phone was this? Then another notification appeared. A message flashed across the screen. Board meeting moved to 8 a.m. Safe travels, Miss Harper. Miss Harper. The name sounded familiar. Very familiar. Ethan suddenly remembered seeing it on local business news. Charlotte Harper. CEO of one of the largest technology companies in Illinois. A woman worth hundreds of millions. A woman he had never met. Or at least, a woman he thought he had never met. Confused and curious, Ethan waited. Maybe the owner would call. 5 minutes later the phone rang. The caller ID read, "Assistant, Megan." Ethan answered. "Hello?" A panicked voice responded immediately. "Oh, thank goodness. You found it. Where are you?" After a brief explanation, Megan sounded relieved. "Please stay there. Ms. Harper is on her way personally." Personally? Ethan found that hard to believe. Surely CEOs didn't retrieve their own lost phones. But 20 minutes later, a black SUV pulled up beside the plaza. A woman stepped out. Elegant coat. Professional posture. Confident expression. Yet the moment she saw Ethan, she stopped walking. Her eyes widened. And for the first time, she looked completely speechless. Ethan? His stomach dropped. Nobody had called him that in that particular voice for nearly 20 years. He stared. Then suddenly recognized her. Charlotte? The woman laughed softly. Not the polished CEO laugh seen in interviews. A genuine one. The kind he remembered from high school. "Wow," she said. "It really is you." For a moment neither moved. It felt impossible. The years had transformed them both. But somehow they still recognized each other. Charlotte finally approached. "You found my phone." Ethan handed it over. "Yeah. Though I have to admit, I'm more curious about the lock screen." Charlotte looked down at the photo. Then smiled. A smile filled with memories. "I figured you'd ask." The rain continued falling as they stood beneath a nearby awning. For the next hour, neither seemed eager to leave. They talked. About life. About time. About everything that had happened since graduation. Ethan learned Charlotte had built her company from a tiny startup into a national success story. Charlotte learned Ethan had become a widowed father 6 years earlier after losing his wife, Hannah, to an illness. When he mentioned Lily, Charlotte's expression softened. That couldn't have been easy. It wasn't. Ethan looked away briefly. Some days still aren't. Charlotte nodded quietly. Then she looked at him with a seriousness that surprised him. You know, she said, I don't think I'd be standing here if it weren't for you. Ethan laughed. I think you're confusing me with somebody else. I'm not. Charlotte's voice was firm. And suddenly Ethan saw something emotional in her eyes. Something she had apparently carried for years. Back in high school, Charlotte wasn't the confident CEO everyone knew today. She was shy. Painfully shy. Her family had moved to Chicago during her sophomore year. She knew nobody. Had no friends. And spent most lunch periods eating alone. Ethan barely remembered it. But Charlotte remembered every detail. One afternoon she had accidentally dropped her books in a crowded hallway. Students walked around her. Some laughed. Others ignored her. Then one person stopped. Ethan. He helped gather her books. Sat with her during lunch. Introduced her to his friends. And kept doing it for weeks. Months, actually. Until she felt like she belonged. It sounds small, Charlotte said. But when you're 16 and completely alone, kindness feels huge. Ethan shrugged. I was just being friendly. Charlotte smiled. Exactly. Then she pointed toward the photo on her phone. That's why it's there. Ethan stared. You kept that picture all these years? Charlotte nodded. Whenever I started doubting myself, I'd remember that day. Ethan didn't know what to say. Nobody had ever described him as life-changing before. Most days he felt invisible. Like another tired parent trying to survive. Yet somehow one simple act from decades earlier had stayed with someone forever. A week later Ethan assumed the encounter was over. A nice reunion. Nothing more. Then his phone rang. Charlotte. She wanted lunch. At first Ethan hesitated. Their worlds were completely different. But Charlotte insisted. During lunch they talked for nearly 3 hours. Not about business. Not about money. About parenting. Grief. Mistakes. Growth. The realities of adulthood. For the first time in years, Ethan felt genuinely seen. And Charlotte admitted she felt the same. Despite her success, she often struggled with loneliness. People treated her title differently than they treated her. Everyone wanted something. Investors. Partners. Media. Few people simply talked to Charlotte the person. Ethan did. Over the next several months they became unlikely friends. Then something unexpected happened. Lily entered the story. One Saturday Charlotte joined Ethan and Lily at a community park cleanup event. Lily immediately liked her. Not because Charlotte was rich. Because Charlotte listened. Really listened. When Lily talked about her dream of becoming an architect, Charlotte asked questions. Encouraged her ideas. Treated her like her opinions mattered. Afterward Lily told her father something that stayed with him. Dad, she makes people feel important. Ethan smiled. You know what? She does. Months later Charlotte invited Ethan and Lily to visit her company headquarters. The employees expected a formal executive tour. Instead they watched their CEO spend most of the afternoon introducing Lily to engineers, designers, and architects. By the end of the day, Lily was glowing. For the first time she could actually imagine her future. Not as a dream. But as a possibility. That evening Charlotte walked them to the elevator. Then handed Lily a notebook. Inside the cover she had written. Big futures often begin with small encouragement. Lily treasured it. Years passed. Friendship deepened. Lives changed. But the most important moment came unexpectedly. One winter, Ethan's father suffered a serious health emergency. The recovery process was long. Exhausting. Emotionally draining. Ethan spent weeks balancing work, caregiving, and parenting. One night he sat alone in a hospital cafeteria feeling completely overwhelmed. Then someone placed a cup of coffee beside him. Charlotte. She had flown back from a business conference after hearing the news. No cameras. No publicity. No announcements. Just friendship. The same kind of kindness Ethan had shown her decades earlier. They sat quietly for a while. Then Charlotte finally spoke. "You know something?" "What?" "I used to think success meant building a company." She shook her head. "I was wrong." Ethan looked at her. Charlotte smiled. "Success is becoming the kind of person who shows up for people." For a moment neither spoke. Because both knew the truth. The lesson hadn't started with the company. Or the wealth. Or the achievements. It had started in a high school hallway. With one teenager choosing kindness when it would have been easier to walk away. Several years later, during a speech at a leadership conference, Charlotte told a story. Not about technology. Not about business growth. Not about entrepreneurship. She told the audience about a lonely 16-year-old girl. A crowded hallway. A pile of dropped books. And a boy who stopped. At the end she said, "The most valuable investment you'll ever make isn't in a company. It's in another human being. Because kindness compounds in ways you'll never see." Sitting in the audience, Ethan felt tears fill his eyes. Beside him, Lily squeezed his hand. And suddenly he understood something important. Most people never know the impact of their kindness. They hold a door. Offer encouragement. Show compassion. Include someone who feels invisible. Then they move on with their lives. Never realizing they may have changed someone's future forever. The world often celebrates big achievements. Big promotions. Big fortunes. Big headlines. But some of the most powerful moments begin quietly. One conversation. One act of empathy. One decision to care. Years earlier, Ethan had found a lost phone. What he didn't realize was that he was actually rediscovering something much greater. Proof that kindness never truly disappears. It travels through time. It grows. It echoes through lives. And sometimes, when you least expect it, it finds its way back to you. As Ethan, Lily, and Charlotte left the conference center that evening, snowflakes drifted gently across the Chicago skyline. 3 people. 3 different journeys. Connected by a single act of kindness that had started decades before. And as they walked into the winter night, each carried the same quiet lesson. You may never know who remembers your kindness. You may never see where it leads. But every time you choose compassion, you plant a seed in someone's life. And one day, that seed may grow into something far bigger than you ever imagined. The end.